Major Peter Mugure, a prime suspect in the disappearance of his family, has today been arrested at the Nanyuki police station. The KDF officer is at the center of the disappearance of his estranged partner, Joyce Syombua, and their two children, Shantel and Prince Michael, on the 26th of October. The trio had traveled to Nanyuki to visit him at the Nanyuki Airbase. It is 20 days and counting since the disappearance of the three.
Imagine this. Your ex calls, says he wants to make things right. After all the heartbreak, it sounds like hope. So you gather your kids, your courage, and board a matatu. You arrive. You're welcomed warmly. It feels like a fresh start, but you never make it back. Your family hears nothing until your ex tells them you ran off with another man. This isn't just betrayal. This is the chilling story of Peter Mugure. If you're into deep dives into true crime mysteries and untold stories from the past, support the channel by hitting the subscribe button, dropping a like, sharing with your crew, and leaving a comment below on a case you think we should cover. This is Dark Echoes, where silence meets the truth. Peter Mugure was a man of stature, discipline, and duty. Born and raised in central Kenya, little is publicly known about his early years, but those who knew him describe a quiet, intelligent boy, not the loudest in the room, but always watching, calculated, focused. From a young age, he dreamt of wearing the uniform, of becoming a soldier. That dream would come true. Peter Mugure joined the Kenya Defense Force in early 2000s, entering as a cadet officer. He trained at the prestigious Kenya Military Academy in Lanet, where only the top percentile make it through. His rise was steady, quiet, the kind of climb you don't notice until the man's already standing above you. He earned respect from his peers and climbed to the rank of major, a position that commands both leadership and influence. At Laikipia Airbase, one of the most secure and significant military sites in Kenya, Mugure held a strategic administrative role. He was part of the inner machinery that kept the base running, filling logistics, commanding units, handling internal affairs. Nothing flashy, nothing heroic, but crucial work that requires precision and trust. And that's what's so disturbing. This wasn't a hot-headed recruit, not a man with record of violence. This was a trained officer, someone who lived by the military code. He understood protocol, structure, and above all, restraint. But behind the uniform, things were falling apart. Somewhere along the line, Peter's personal life began to unravel. He had been in a relationship with Joyce Syombua, a soft-spoken woman who worked as a civilian. Together, they had two children, a daughter Shantel and a son Prince. But the relationship turned volatile. Sources close to Joyce say that there were arguments, control issues, allegation of emotional abuse. Eventually, she left him. That separation fractured Peter's carefully constructed image. And then Joyce took the children with her. The wound became something deeper, something he saw not as loss but betrayal. In 2019, a family court ruled that Peter had to pay child support. The ruling wasn't unexpected. It was fair. But to Peter Mugure, it felt like humiliation. Not just a financial burden, but a public stripping of his pride. To pay a woman he no longer loved, for children he felt were being weaponized against him, he saw it as defeat. And that, perhaps, is where the real man behind the uniform began to surface. Colleagues began noticing a change in him. He grew colder, less social, more paranoid. There were quiet rumors that he resented his ex and spoke bitterly about the court's decision. Some even say he hinted that he'd find a way out of it, one way or another. But no one imagined this. By all military records, Peter Mugure was still a competent officer, still showing up, still issuing commands. But inside, the mask was cracking. What no one wanted to see was the storm brewing underneath. A man conditioned to hide weakness, trained to suppress emotions, slowly transforming pride into rage. He had every resources at his disposal: authority, access, a network of loyal subordinates, and he used all of it, not for justice, not for honor, but to plan the murder of his own blood. This is the chilling paradox. Peter Mugure wasn't a man pushed to the edge by circumstances. He was a man who prepared for that edge, who chose to step off it, who used his training, his intelligence, and his rank to orchestrate one of the most cold-blooded family killings in recent Kenya history. And the fall wasn't sudden, it was methodical, silent. Like a soldier moving through shadows undetected until it was too late. So what happened when Joyce and the kids arrived at Laikipia Airbase that Friday afternoon? What horrors unfolded behind locked military gates? And what made a father bury his own children? It was October 2019, rainy season in Kenya, a time when the skies hung low and grey, and for Peter Mugure the storm wasn't just in the clouds. By then, Peter was sitting quietly. The court had just ruled that he must provide financial support for the 2 children he had with Joyce Syombua. A perfectly reasonable order, but not for Peter. He saw it as a defeat, a command from civilian law that he couldn't override, not even with his military status. To a man whose entire life was about control, orders, discipline, rank, that ruling felt like a personal betrayal. He started laying the groundwork, the kind of groundwork no one noticed at the time, because no one wanted to believe a decorated soldier could plan something so monstrous. He started talking to people, select people, trusted people. One of them was junior officers at Laikipia Airbase, a man who would later be arrested for helping dispose of the body. Whether this man knew the full plan or just followed orders, we may never know. But Peter was moving pieces, quietly, strategically, and then he made the call. He called Joyce. After months of tension, silence, and legal back and forth, Peter reached out and invited her to Laikipia Airbase. He said he wanted to see the children, said he missed them, wanted to reconnect, maybe even work things out. It was a carefully constructed lie. Joyce was hesitant. She confided in friends that something felt off, but she also knew that her children missed their father. That maybe, just maybe, this was the chance for healing. A second chance. So she agreed. She packed bags for Shantel and Prince, told friends she'd be back in a few days, and boarded a matatu to Nanyuki. It was Friday, October 25th. They arrived at the airbase in the afternoon. CCTV footage confirms it. Joyce, Shantel, and Prince passed through the gates with Peter. They were officially guests, cleared and documented. Everything looked normal, routine, but what happened next has never fully been pieced together. Investigations believe Peter took them into secluded parts of the base, possibly a residence or quarters under his control, a place with no cameras, no witnesses. There, police allege he restrained and murdered them one by one. It wasn't impulsive. It wasn't a crime of passion. It was structured, cold, and calculated. Peter then called in his accomplice. Together they allegedly wrapped the bodies, placed them in sacks, and loaded them in a military vehicle. That night, they drove 15 kilometers out of town to a farm near Makaburini areas. Under the cover of darkness, they dug a shallow grave and dumped the bodies like garbage, covered them with soil and silence. The next day, Peter went back to base, business as usual. But Joyce's friends grew worried. She didn't call, didn't text, didn't even log into WhatsApp. That wasn't like her. She always checked in, always let someone know where she was. 3 days passed. On October 28th, Joyce's family reported her and the children missing. Police began tracking her last known location. It all led back to Laikipia, back to Peter. When questioned, he claimed Joyce had left the base and gone into town, that she had taken the kids with her, that she probably ran off with someone, but none of it made sense. She hadn't packed to leave permanently. Her phone had gone cold, and Peter, usually calm, composed, was dodging questions like a man with something to hide. The door closed. It was just him, Joyce, and the 2 kids inside the room now. No cameras, no witnesses, no help. Peter Mugure had led his family into his military quarters at Laikipia Airbase, a place meant to be secure, protected. But for Joyce and her 2 children, it will become a tomb. No one heard screams. No alarm was raised. What happened next was silence, clinical and planned to the second. First, he turned on Joyce. Investigators believed he killed her quickly, possibly strangled her with a cord or rope. There was no gunshots, no sound of struggle. Joyce was likely caught off guard, trusting the man she once loved. He was stronger, trained, in control. She died in that room. The woman who bore his children, gone, silenced. And then he turned to them. 10-year-old Shanice, bright, talkative, full of life. And 5-year-old Prince, still small enough to believe that his daddy was a hero. Did they hear it happen? Did they see their mother collapse? Did they cry? Did they run? We don't know. But what we do know is that they were murdered next, individually, deliberately. Peter Mugure, their father, their protector, became the executioner. He strangled Shanice slowly. No child should die like that, especially not by the hands of someone who's supposed to love them. Then Prince, the baby, the last one. And when it was done, the room was still. 3 bodies, 1 man, no remorse. Afterwards, he moved with purpose. No panic, no shaking hands, no hesitation. He wrapped each of them in military bedsheets, standard issue, cold institutional. The same fabric used in soldier barracks was now used to muffle the stench of death. Then he stuffed the bodies into black plastic sacks, not coffins, not blankets, sacks like garbage. One by one, he loaded them into the government vehicle, another tool of the system he once served. He enlisted help from a junior officer in the base. Whether that man knew he was helping cover up a murder or simply followed orders doesn't change what happened next. They drove out at night, 15 kilometers away. In the Makaburini area, they found a clearing. No lights, no one watching, just a patch of land and time. They dug, not deep, not careful, just enough, and then he dropped them in. Joyce, Shanice, Prince, all together. One shallow grave, one monstrous act, no ceremony, no prayers, no goodbyes. He covered them with soil and silence, drove back to base and slept. But you can't bury silence forever. 3 days went by, not a word from Joyce. Her sister knew something was wrong. She could feel it in her guts, the kind of dread that lives in your bones before your brain even catches up. She went to the police, told them Joyce had taken the kids to visit Peter at Laikipia Airbase and hadn't come back. The phone's off, no messages, no updates, nothing. Police started pulling records, last known phone signal inside the base, and just like that, suspicion turned into certainty. They brought Peter in. He didn't panic, didn't flinch, said Joyce left on her own, took the kids. Maybe she went to Nairobi, she told them. Maybe she's with another man. But the more he spoke, the more the lies started to rot, because someone else knew. One of Peter's fellow soldiers, the one who helped him move the bodies, cracked under pressure. He told them everything. And then Peter caved, led police down a dusty road past the edges of Nanyuki to a patch of land near Makaburini. There, beneath bristled grass and disturbed soil, were the remains. Officers dug slowly. One of them reportedly dropped to his knees when the first body appeared, wrapped like trash. 3 human beings, a mother, daughter, and son, all buried together, all murdered by the man who was supposed to protect them. People turned on the television and saw the photos, Joyce smiling with her kids, not knowing her time was running out. Peter Mugure was arrested, charged with 3 counts of murder, and as the media swarmed, he stood expressionless. No sorrows, no regrets, just silence. He was denied bail. The military stripped him of his rank, but the damage was already done. Joyce's family never got the closure they deserved. The trial dragged on, slow and cruel. Justice didn't move fast enough, because how do you measure a crime like that? How do you sentence a man who killed his own children with these bare hands? When Peter Mugure entered the courtroom for the first time, he didn't come in like a man crushed by guilt. There was no slumped shoulder, no trembling hands. He walked in upright, calm, composed, like a man headed to a meeting. not standing trial for the cold-blooded murder of his entire family. It was unnerving. People in the gallery watched him closely, their expressions unreadable. But make no mistake, they weren't looking at a man. They were looking at a ghost, a father, a soldier, and a killer. The courtroom was full. Journalists packed the aisles. Camera hovered at the edge of silence. And at the front, Joyce Syombua's family sat quietly. Her sister never looked away from Peter. Her eyes stayed locked on him. She was trying to see into whatever darkness had taken him over. The prosecution wasted no time. They laid out the narrative clean and cold. Jess had brought her children, 10-year-old Shanice and 5-year-old Prince, to visit Peter at Laikipia Airbase. They never left. According to the states, Peter murdered all three, one by one. He strangled them, wrapped the bodies in military sheets, and buried them in a shallow grave out in the bush, just outside Nanyuki. Then came the prosecution's key witness, a junior officer who worked under Peter. His voice trembled as he took the stand. He explained how Peter called him that day and casually asked him to help load the claimed family belongings into a military vehicle. But the bags were heavy, too heavy. He knew something was wrong. When asked why he didn't speak up, the officers lowered his gaze and said, "I was scared. He was my supervisor, and I saw what he was capable of." The silence that followed was heavier than any words. Forensic experts took the stand next. They described the cause of death, strangulations. No defensive wounds, no sense of struggle. That meant Joyce and her children didn't fight back. They likely didn't even know they were in danger until it was already too late. Each detail felt like a blade across the throats. Joyce's mother wept quietly. At one point, the judge had to pause to let the courtroom breathe. Then came Peter's plea, not guilty. His face was unreadable. No emotion, no remorse. His defense team tried to poke holes in the timeline, claimed the evidence was circumstantial, suggested someone else might have buried the bodies, but the prosecution stood firm. GPS data, phone record, witness testimony, and Peter's own confession once the pressure cracked him. In the closing arguments, the prosecutor drove the truth home. He didn't snap. He planned, he lured them in, he murdered them, and then he tried to erase them from the earth, like their lives never mattered. The jury left. Hours passed. When they returned, the room held its breath, guilty on all counts. Peter flinched, just a twitch, just enough to show something, fear, maybe, or the beginning of a crack. Jess's family held each other in silence. There was no cheering, no relief, just quiet grief, the kind that doesn't go away. Peter Mugure was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As the guards led him away, he didn't look back, didn't acknowledge the lives he destroyed, didn't say a word. He just walked into the dark like he belonged there. Justice was served. But no verdict could restore what was lost. A mother, 2 children, a future that will never be. And long after the judge's gavel echoed through that room, the real sentence lived on, not in the courtroom, but in the hearts of those left behind.